I am so tired of coming on this podcast every single week and telling you to stop playing T.Y. Hilton. Like, just stop it.
Mikey needs help.
Mikey needs help.
I was like, if you don't have Jeff Wilson in here, and if you don't run it on first down, I'm going to strangle you through that TV.
You should know better than everyone else. That fool tears you up when you plays you.
Yeah, but
Don't you want him on your team?
I have him at number 25.
Thank you. Fine. Todd's the reasonable one on this show.
I take issue with everything he said there.
Well,
I really do.
DeAndre Swift. He's going to break them tackles, son.
That's bold. That's bold. That's putting your nuts on the table right there.
Hey, there's the first time for everything.
Waxing poetic over here with Todd Diamond.
Dude's old.
So what? He's not as old as Brady, and you're jerking him off before the show starts.
I have Sutton in my top 10. I have him at number 9. Yes.
You know what? I'm just canceling the league. I can't do this with you guys. What's up, MHA owners? We got ourselves a brand new champion here in the 2022 season. Eric Lansing here, along with the usual suspects and Mikey Renault and Todd Diamond. We're doing the championship podcast a little later than usual because of the Damar Hamlin incident that took place 2 Mondays ago. We hope Damar is doing well. Looks like he is. Seems to be improving each day. A few days after the incident, the NFL decided to cancel that Bengals-Bills Monday night game. Luckily, it didn't affect our championship game, and so as we now have the Gonzo Cats are this year's champion. So joining us on the podcast is the owner of the new MHA champions, David Pollen. Pollen, congratulations. How you feeling, kid?
Oh, thanks. It's good to be on here. Honored to be invited. Happy to be a champion after 16 years. It's been a long time coming, and super stoked to have my own little tiki trophy coming my way.
I'm glad someone still calls it the Tiki Trophy. I mean, I feel like some people don't have a love for Tiki Barber, so at least someone out there still appreciates it. Miguel, right?
Sure don't.
Not a big fan of Tiki Barber. So what are we going to talk about in this podcast? Mostly about the kind of championship recap. We'll talk with Pollen about how his season went. We'll look back at the draft and some of the pickups and, of course, the Gardner Minshew, Jalen Hurts stuff, and kind of give you the outline of what's going to look like next year's draft in terms of the draft order and tell you what's coming up in next week's show. So happy to have Pollen with us here. So let's get right into it. Championship recap. The 2-seeded Gonzo Cats taking on 6-seeded Kilgore Trout. The Gonzo Cats looking for their first MHA title. Kilgore Trout hoping to snag their second. The Gonzo Cats were once again without their top quarterback in Jalen Hurts for the second straight week. So it was Gardner Minshew. Who'd have thunk it? Once again, leading the way for Pollen's squad. Didn't do so bad the prior week, 50 points. And Gonzo Cats also without Deebo Samuel and Tony Pollard. So rough start to the beginning of that week. And that's kind of where we'll start that Thursday night game with Dallas. No Pollard. They're taking on the Titans. CeeDee Lamb, who ripped apart the Tamales in week 16. Remember that, Miguel?
We don't talk about the previous.
Oh, we don't
week.
talk about that. We don't go back.
I thought we were talking about the championship game.
Okay, well, just wanted to make sure it was still in your mind there. So 11 receptions for CeeDee Lamb, 100 yards, 16 points to kick off the championship matchup. And then we head to Sunday, and the quarterback play is going to be huge. Kirk Cousins and Gardner Minshew. A little less than stellar. Minshew just 32 points against a beatable Saints defense, but was able to at least make Devontae Smith relevant, 14 points. Cousins, who's been carrying Joe's team the previous 3 weeks, he'd been averaging 65 points per game. But against the Packers at Lambeau, just 27 points. So that wasn't so the quarterback matchup wasn't going to decide the fate of these two owners. Kilgore Trout got yet another 20-point game from Christian McCaffrey. He's had quite the season. Should be drafted high once again next year, but not much help outside of that. 6 players with 8 points or less, including just one from his flex position in Christian Watson. Gonzo Cats got solid days from Mike Williams, 11 points. Darren Waller, how about that? We'll talk about that with Pollen here in a little bit, 12 points. Cam Akers, still bitter about that, 13 points. And how about the Giants defense piling up 15 points? Of course, that putrid Colts squad. So while no one stood out really for the Gonzo Cats, you had 7 players with 11 or more points. And they would go on and win 118-100 to capture their first MHA crown. Of course, we mentioned this Monday night game and all that. Didn't really affect it before we talked upon a little bit. Third place game. Won't go too much into this one. A better quarterback matchup. Tom Brady, Patrick Mahomes finished with 136 total points. Eckler, 29 points. Dalton Schultz, 2 touchdowns to start things off on that Thursday night. Of course, the canceled game did have an effect on that third place game. Lemonheads up 146 to 139 with Joe Mixon left. Tamales with T. Higgins still left to play. But with the canceled game, no points came out of it, thus giving the Lemonheads third place. No big deal. No bitterness on this side of things. That's just how it goes. Both of us are more first place or none. And so no does of the week. Didn't really see any miscues in terms of not playing the right players. So great job to Joe and Pollen. So let's talk to the champ. We talked about Pollen's 16 years in the Mile High Affiliates League. For those who aren't familiar, Pollen, tell us kind of where the Gonzo Cats name comes from.
Well, the team was created back in my journalism days, and I'm a big fan
days,
of Hunter S. Thompson. Yeah, college days, Gonzo journalism. So that's where the Gonzo comes from. And honestly, I don't even know where the Cats thing came from. I think it was an animal that sounded good to go with Gonzo, and then it's just it's been that way ever since. And I've got this great profile picture that I think you found.
Yeah, it hasn't changed since we put it in.
It hasn't changed. Yeah. So I've just stuck with it,
I love it. Kind of looking back in your draft a little bit. You drafted in the 8th spot. I was looking over your team. Here's kind of how they lay out. You drafted Dalvin Cook in the first round. Solid. Maybe a little underwhelming at times. Finished 10th amongst running backs. Deebo Samuel injured for big portions of the season. Cam Akers didn't do anything for a good chunk of the season. Mike Williams, effective when he was on the field, but he missed some time. Breece Hall was fantastic until he suffered a season-ending injury.
Mm-hmm.
Darren Waller missed most of the season. How in the world did you finish second this season?
I have no idea. Your guess is as good
crazy,
as mine. I did not like my draft position at all. I did not like having the 8th pick. I think I'd rather be closer to the end or near the top. And, Yahoo didn't like my draft either. And, there wasn't, I was trying to find a good running back there and with the 8th pick. I think Dalvin Cook was on the top of my list, although he wasn't great. He was all right. He had a pretty decent year, I guess, top 10. But, I thought Deebo might deal with some injuries, but I thought he would provide more. Even if he missed a few games, he would still be solid. Cam Akers obviously was a projected starter coming off that Achilles heel. It just didn't look like he had it back, and just a guy that didn't really know what was going to happen with him all season. I just kind of hung on to him because there's not a lot of running backs, and I thought, well, maybe if they trade him, he gets a new start with a new team, he'll be all right, which they didn't end up doing. And then he was asked to leave the team or whatever that was, and then he came back, and every week he just looked like he was getting better and better, and he really came up big for me when it counted, and I'm really glad I decided to hold on to him. I almost dropped him many times, but I don't know, I had a weird feeling about him the whole year, thinking that at one point he was going to come through. Breece Hall was a nice surprise. Unfortunately, then he got hurt. Excuse me.
Uh-oh.
Sorry.
Champ has his fans, man. He's blowing up now.
So, Brandon Cooks was just a guy that I thought he was the only option in Houston. He might be the only guy getting the ball that, didn't work out. I knew Tony Pollard would get a share of the carries in Dallas. I think that he ended up having a great year. Never drafted Devonta Smith thinking he would be anything more than a flex, but he ended up being having a pretty good season and really being one of my top wide receivers. Really, though, I just don't know how I pulled it off. I am happy that I did. I think Jalen Hurts played a big part in that.
Yeah, perhaps.
I knew he was going to have a yeah, I knew he was going to have a solid year. He's trying to he was trying to solidify himself as the starter, and he wants to get paid. And uh, I've always been a fan of him. He's a Houston boy, and so I
Ah,
just
see, now it all makes sense.
yeah,
I'm wondering.
Channel View High School, and then his dad's a coach. I think he had a tremendous upside. So I think that was just kind of a good uh, draft pick on my part.
Yeah, I think so. You look at your draft, and Jalen Hurts in the 8th round, Devonta Smith in the 9th round, Tony Pollard in the 10th round. So you got some major production out of guys kind of down the line. We're all trying to fish for those guys to step up and put up some points, and hopefully one of those guys kind of pans out. But from your 8th and 9th and 10th round was pretty incredible. Uh, Hurts was your first quarterback that you drafted. I don't know if that was your plan going in terms of waiting on a QB, or maybe all the quarterbacks you were hoping to take early were picked, and then Jalen Hurts, who put up some solid stats, nothing tremendous or I guess glamorous from last year. So was it your plan to kind of wait and then take Jalen Hurts, or is that just kind of the way the draft fell for you?
No, that's kind of the guy that was on the top of my board in terms of quarterbacks that I knew that I could get later. The years, my most, I think, unsuccessful years in this league was getting a quarterback early. And I think, took that strategy from Quayne, who always used to wait on a quarterback. And honestly, there's 12 guys in the league, and there's at least 12 or 13 quarterbacks in the NFL that are going to give you good stats. Obviously, there's only the one Patrick Mahomes or Tom Brady, those kind of top tier guys. But I I was looking at last year. I think Jalen Hurts, he was still one of the highest point getters in terms of quarterbacks. I think he was in the top 5 maybe in terms of fantasy points, just with his rushing ability, rushing touchdowns. I knew that he was going to they were going to work on him being a better passer this year. So I was really kind of hoping that would kind of come to fruition, and it did. But just a guy that I liked and I knew I could get later, and that I thought I would get, pretty good point production from. I think he surpassed my expectations, but that's kind of what I was banking on with him.
Well, that's huge. When you can kind of get a guy later on to put up. He finished 8th in our league. Finished 9th in our league among scoring on our quarterbacks. He's not a big completion guy, but man, when he's running, racking up those point totals, it makes a huge difference. He had 608 total points last year. I don't think he played a full season last year. That's why he's probably down a little bit, but he definitely showed the ability there. Kind of going back to you had the first round bye. You took on those Lemonheads in the semifinals. You see that Hurts goes down, that he's not going to play that week. Was it always Gardner Minshew? Were you thinking about any other quarterback? Because you didn't have one on your roster, at least a backup on your roster. So were you kind of freaking out at that point? Like, what was kind of your mission or your thoughts about going into that? I mean, I got some.
I was freaking out. I was freaking out, but I think
not to
that I
mention
was
that
going to
being
go with
like
Gardner.
eight times in a row or something like that. So I'm sure all that was on your
Yeah, sure. Yes, exactly. You were my big Achilles heel, and then Jalen Hurts going. I learned, when you texted me about it, and I kind of looked at who's available out there. I didn't really like any of the guys I could have picked up, and I knew that I've always liked Gardner Minshew. I knew he'd get the start. I think with Mike Leach passing away, I had a feeling that he was just going to kind of play special. Um, he had a close relationship with Mike Leach, so I thought that would help propel him. I don't like Chris Sims, and I think Chris Sims is an idiot. But he thinks that anybody you plugged into that offense would do well, and so I was like, well, I guess we're going to find out. So I just thought he was the best option. Nobody had him. He was going to get a start. He's on a great offense with great supporting cast. But I felt he would play with a heavy heart with the passing of his coach. So, and he
Wow, so
did.
God had a factor in your win.
Well, I don't know about God,
Thanks, God.
I think
Whoever you pray to.
Gardner. I think he was just the best option. He was going to get us started on a good offense and an offense that I knew, has weapons, and he had a chance of getting some points, and he had a hell of a game.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
that was
yeah.
fun. That was a fun game.
Were you watching that? Were you watching that game at all? I know I was watching after the first games. This is Pollen and I's matchup still in the semifinal. After Justin Jefferson had that late touchdown against the Giants, I felt pretty good. I was like, okay, as long as nothing that goes incredibly crazy, I should be all right. And then I was hanging out Mikey's, and I had to go run some errands real quick, and then I get to my place first, and then I see Minshew to Devonta Smith. Okay, no big deal. Go run an errand. I get to Mikey's house. Right when I pull up to his house, the second Gardner Minshew to Devonta Smith touchdown, and
Right.
I almost ripped the steering wheel off my car at that point. But
Well, yeah,
pretty
I mean,
amazing
I
to
think I
see that.
texted you after
Yeah.
the Jefferson touchdown with the Minnesota game. I didn't think I stood a chance after that Jefferson touchdown. And when that happened, I was like, well, shit. I did not expect Devonta Smith to have the day that he had. And so, but I was watching that game. I mean, I hate the Cowboys, and I've been a big Eagles fan this year since the Texans are just about as bad as a little bit slightly worse than the Broncos.
You get a pick of a new quarterback, so you got to be happy about that.
Yeah, we'll see. I've been seeing rumors about Derek Carr, which I don't know what I think about that
Yikes.
either.
No. Get Stroud or Young. No, don't do it.
Bryce
Don't do it.
Young, yeah. But yeah, so I was definitely watching that Philly Dallas game, and I was going nuts, man. I was going nuts with those 2 touchdowns, and I think he had another catch later that got called back or something that I was hoping would just give me more of a cushion. But yeah, what a performance by both those guys.
75 points between Minshew and Smith.
Yeah.
Unbelievable.
But I think Cam Akers was you guys talked about it on the podcast, the last podcast. I mean,
yeah,
Cam Akers, 32 points
folks.
against the Broncos. I mean, that
ruined my Christmas.
That was not, yeah, that was very unexpected, but also very welcome.
Yeah, for a guy who, hold on, I got to find this number. So you mentioned you kept him on your roster all season long. You thought about dropping a couple times. He scored 31 points in the first 12 weeks of the season combined. 31 in 12 weeks. He had 32 in that one game against a usually pretty stout Denver Bronco defense. The fantasy gods did not favor me this day.
Yeah, and I was almost not going to play him. I was almost going to play Curtis Samuel or even Cooks because he was going up against the Broncos defense. But I don't know. Something inside of me told me, I think he's due for a big game. And, he had a huge game.
Yeah. So kudos to you I don't know if I'd have been able to do it myself just based on the production. I know he had double-digit games coming into that one. They were at home, so I don't know if that mattered. And Denver was at some point with Denver's good defense, you get tired of the offense not producing, and then you just stop giving an F. I don't know if that's what happened, but it's definitely sure what it looked like. Talk about your championship matchup, your thoughts going into that one. Did you feel good about it? Not a high scoring game, but you did enough to come out with the championship. So what was your kind of thoughts? CeeDee Lamb scored those 16 points early on you, but not too much from Kilgore after that.
Yeah, so I wasn't terribly confident with the matchup going in. I thought Joe's team has been on a run and has been playing well. He's been on fire, but I did have a feeling that Kirk Cousins playing outside in Green Bay was not going to have the game. That's thanks to Mikey, who brought up all those stats on last week's podcast about Kirk Cousins playing indoors versus outdoors.
Yeah, look what happened.
Yeah. So I mean, I was kind of hoping for that to come true. I didn't. I considered picking up Jarrett Stidham because I didn't think that Minshew would go back to back weeks having a big game. Um, but at the same time, I was like, uh, I knew Stidham. You know, he was at Baylor with Bryles before he transferred to Auburn, and I'd watched him a lot. And then he was with the Patriots and McDaniel, so I knew he knew that offense. He ended up having a huge game. But
54
I decided,
points. Yeah.
yeah, I decided to stick with Minshew, and he performed about what I expected him to do. Um, I, I kind of wish I would have picked up Stidham, but in the end, I got the win. Thankfully, Joe was due for kind of a down week, and that's I didn't have any really stellar performances, but I did have a lot of you know uh, guys hitting or getting a little bit above their projections. And Darren Waller was a guy, I didn't know I could have played Dawson Knox or Freermuth, but I just wasn't confident in those guys. And typically, a tight end is a good option for a young quarterback that hasn't had a lot of playing time or reps or starts. They typically like to
Yeah.
find the tight end, so that's kind of what I was banking on with Stidham. Uh, Maybe utilizing Waller a little bit, and you got him a touchdown. So, uh, that worked out well. Badgley,
Another guy you held on to all season despite being injured and all that. Yeah.
yeah. Well, he's a pretty solid producer if he's healthy, but that's the problem. He's not always healthy. And then defensively speaking, I had Buffalo's defense, and they were going against the Bengals, and I did not think I was going to get a lot of points from them. So I was looking for defenses to maybe play in their stead, and I picked up the Giants, who were going against the awful Colts, and that really paid off big for me, getting 15 points versus what would have been 0 points, I think,
Yeah.
as a result. I guess I won by 18, so. But I think that pickup of the Giants defense was a big move for sure.
And the win was yours, 118 to 100. I wanted to ask, what was your biggest pickup of the season? So I went to look at some of the guys that you went to pick up. You only made 12 moves all season, which was a league low. So you must have liked your team pretty well. So I guess it has to be the Minshew pickup. Was that your pickup of the entire season, or did someone else kind of step up in a different way for you?
Yeah, I think so. I didn't make a lot of moves because you guys are on it all the time, and if I'm just a little bit behind the eight ball sometimes, or I'll forget about it, and I'm looking on Thursday or Friday of guys that are there. Everybody's already made a bunch of moves, so there's in this league with a lot of owners who know what they're doing and are pretty knowledgeable and follow it very closely. If you're not on it, there's really slim pickings. So I think that the Minshew pickup was huge for the that first playoff game against the Lemonheads, and I would probably have to agree with you there. And I think just picking up that Giants defense in the next week was also a good one too. Just kind of two moves that I made in the playoffs that really helped get me to that victory. So that
Yeah,
championship.
three of those 12 pickups were in the playoffs. So, and two of them
Yeah.
worked out big. I don't think you played DJ Chark, but I'm sure that was just kind of in case something didn't go correct or whatnot. So,
Yeah.
so from your team, who was your MVP? Who do you think carried you, or was it one of your late round picks that really kind of made a difference later on? Who would you announce as your team's MVP?
Oh, it's got to be Jalen Hurts. I
Yeah,
think,
I think so.
Even though he missed a couple weeks there at the end, I didn't get to use him in the playoffs, but I think, he's a big reason that I was in the playoffs. And, um, Tony Pollard had some great games for me too.
Yeah, he did.
So that's definitely one. I think he gets a mention. And I think the biggest surprise for me was really Devonta Smith. I think he had some games that really helped me out, kind of
Yeah, he ended up
unexpectedly.
finishing fifth amongst all wide receivers, if you can believe that.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it's crazy. So, and that's a guy that I just had to play because Debo was hurt and Mike Williams was hurt, and he was kind of my third guy, but I think he ended up really being my number one guy. So, especially from like week 13 on, he was like 16, 14, 11, 25, 14, 10. I mean, that's pretty awesome. So, but yeah, I think Jalen Hurts with honorable mentions to Devonta Smith and Tony Pollard.
Sorry, he finished seventh, but yeah, still pretty incredible. The season he put together, 95 receptions, 7 touchdowns. Always, I think that's always a conversation at the beginning of the year. Is like, should you stack a quarterback and a wide receiver if it pans out that way? And sometimes it works out, sometimes it doesn't. Because if they both are having bad seasons and you're both kind of out of luck. But if you get guys that are doing well, and they even brought AJ Brown over, so that kind of made him a number 2 guy. But boy, he didn't really play like a number 2 guy. I mean, he finished 2 behind. So AJ Brown's the one that actually finished 5th overall in terms of points. So Jalen Hurts in that offense. So it made sense for you to put Gardner Minshew in there because with Miles Sanders and the rest of that squad, I mean, they were putting up points. So it was a good move by you, and it ended up paying off in the end. So great job in that respect. And, what I've been asking all the questions. Mikey, Todd, do you have anything for Pollen at all?
I was just gonna say, Paulin, it's kind of full circle for you because winning a championship with an Eagles quarterback, because an Eagles quarterback lost you a championship, so it's kind of full circle, for you on that one. So that's that was a sign. That's a sign. You remember who was your quarterback in the championship game in 2010?
Was it Nick Foles? I don't know. I have no idea.
We don't talk about Nick Foles. That was a different Eagles quarterback. We don't talk
I was
about that
airing
one.
against Todd.
Yeah. No, it was Kevin.
Oh, was it
Cobb.
Oh.
Kevin Cobb, I think.
Kevin Cobb. Wow.
Yeah.
U of
Not
H
that
product.
name.
Yeah.
Wow.
So that's the quarterback that won it there. So yeah, so kind of full circle there. It's kind of interesting. It started with an Eagles quarterback and it ends with an Eagles quarterback. So good on you there. Like I said, you've been in the league a lot longer than I have, and to finally get one. Like I said, when you get a championship, your mindset kind of changes a little bit more. I mean, I'm not saying you coast by any means, but it's like, okay, I got one now. I can, I can. Your mindset kind of changes a little bit going forward when you draft or when you pick up players, because it's like, okay, you try to copy what you did last season into the, and I mean that obviously doesn't work, but your mindset kind of changes. But good on you. I mean, it's some teams that win the championship, their teams are just like stacked. They have the big names. You go back from years past, you have the Peyton Mannings, the Drew Breeses, the and Tom Brady's of the world, and the Randy Mosses and everything like that. And you did it with Jalen Hurts and Devontae Smith and Tony Pollard. So good on you. Good on you for that.
Mikey, do you have anything?
No, I just wanted to mention, for me, it was very interesting to hear, his thought process when it came to Gardner Minshew. I thought that was fascinating, the whole Mike Leach aspect of the whole thing, because, I mean, it's not even something that crossed my mind. I'm so much when I, do things, it's like matchup driven and, previous history against teams. I look at that kind of stuff and, injuries that and all that. I never even thought about that. So, I mean, that was good on you for, having that play out and, even thinking about that, and definitely worked out for you.
Yeah, it did. Well, it's funny that Gardner Minshew is as I coach. I coach football at Berthoud High School part time, and the offensive coordinator I coach with, he was really wanting the Broncos to have signed Gardner Minshew over the offseason, before they signed Russell Wilson or after they signed Russell Wilson. And he's a big Minshew fan. And I had read this article about Gardner Minshew living in a van outside a gym in the offseason, and literally just working out all day, every day. And, either living out of his van or the gym there. It's a pretty fascinating article. And I actually texted him, I guess, Christmas Eve. And I said, well, here's hoping your boy Gardner Minshew gives me a nice Christmas present. So he was a guy that we kind of talked about all year during the season. Like, well, if Jalen Hurts ever gets down, maybe he'll get a shot and show what he can do. So, he's a guy that there's not a lot of film on. I guess you have a little bit of film from his Jacksonville, his season in Jacksonville, his rookie season. But other than that, he's kind of been a little journeyman backup. So he got a shot in a big game, and even though they didn't win that game, he played well enough, I think, for them to win. So.
Yeah, he probably got himself a nice 6-figure salary maybe next year based on that one performance against a Dallas defense who more games than not are pretty solid. So good for him. I mean, to be, busting his butt. You love the game enough. I don't know how many people would actually go out of the way to live in a van and next to a gym. So, man, that's a cool story to say the least. So you mentioned you're a Houston Texans fan. Can they fix that at all? I mean, what is this? Their third coach in 3 years?
Yeah, it's pretty disastrous. Not that Bob McNair was, any good, but he obviously had his problems and a bit of a racist, as it turns out. But I think that the Houston sports media refers to Cal McNair as Tommy Boy.
Oh boy,
as the guy that's just kind of made his way in life because of his dad and kind of had everything handed to him, and he's been terrible. And I think they've mismanaged everything since he became the owner. It's just it's a nightmare situation over there. I think they obviously mishandled the GM search, and then going with Caserio, which angered Deshaun Watson, who then wanted out. Which, I mean,
probably worked
in
out.
hindsight, yeah, that kind of worked out given his proclivity to massage therapists. But I think Nick Caserio, I don't know why they're trying to be the Patriots. And I think Jack Easterby, they finally got rid of him, but he was a poison on the organization. I think that they hired 2 black head coaches because they were getting a lot of heat for not, looking at minority candidates and things like that. And actually they had some minority GM candidates and then decided last minute to go with Caserio, who wasn't even they had hired a firm to help them hire this GM, and he gave them 3 candidates. Caserio wasn't even on the list.
Oh, wow.
And that was kind of a last minute move by, I think Jack Easterby and McNair to bring him in. So I think that's why they hired David Culley, kind of set him up to fail. And then I don't even think that Lovey was really a guy that they wanted, but he had been on the staff under Culley, and that they didn't get. I think the guy they really wanted was Gannon from the Eagles, but for whatever reason they couldn't make that happen, and so they ended up going with Lovey. And I think it's, who knows? You're seeing a lot of things about them hiring 2 black head coaches and firing them after a year. I think there's certainly something there. But they're just not doing things the right way in that organization, as far as I'm concerned. So I don't know what's going to happen with them.
So after all that long diatribe, the answer is no. There is no way it's going to be fixed anytime soon.
Exactly.
Jeez. so,
So,
so, so us and the you and the Broncos. Yeah, that's kind of how it's
but,
rolling these days.
and they knew they were going to be bad, so I don't know why they were expecting Lovey to, be able to turn it around in the season. They had no weapons. They have no quarterback. They have
Well,
nothing really.
Yeah.
and
So
I read too that Brandon Cooks wants out too. I mean, that's not a
yeah,
shocker. I mean,
Well,
saw that today.
he's
Well,
wanted
he
out
doesn't want
since
to.
halfway through the season. I feel.
Yeah,
season.
he doesn't want to be part of a rebuild, and that's understandable.
Yeah,
He's 29 years old or something.
but
So
you think if so you guys have the number 2 overall pick, and obviously the Bears aren't going to draft a quarterback, obviously. So you have the pick of the litter for that part. But if you're the Texans, regardless of obviously whoever comes in as the coach or whatever the case may be, or whoever running the show, would you be okay with if they traded down to get more picks to get to kind of do like a whole rebuild, or do you want them to stay pat at number 2, draft one of the top quarterbacks, and maybe he can, maybe whoever it is, whether it's Young or Stroud, to kind of rejuvenate that Texans organization a little bit on the field, or is that kind of just a coin flip, I guess?
well, they've got a lot of picks. So
Okay. Can we have some
they've
of
got
them?
a lot of picks, right?
The
They got
Broncos
a lot
don't
of
have a lot of
picks
them.
from
Can we borrow
from the
some of them,
Watson
please?
trade. Yeah, for real. They the
We'll give you.
Watson trade gave them some picks. So I think they've got 2 first-round picks anyway.
Okay.
If it's me personally, I'm a quarterback guy. I like holding on to the number 2 pick and getting you need to bring in the franchise, or what you think is going to be your
A
franchise
franchise
quarterback.
quarterback. Okay.
I think that in this league, you've got to have a franchise quarterback if you want to be a successful
Got that
franchise.
right. You got that right.
Is it Bryce Young or CJ Stroud? I don't know. Is Nick Caserio so full of himself that he thinks he can find a guy in the 5th or 6th round? Maybe so.
There's this quarterback class I mean, it's not it's top heavy, but it's not deep. I'll tell you that right
Correct.
now. It's not even close. But
So I don't know I wouldn't be surprised if the Texans do something stupid.
cool.
That's
All
kind
right.
of what they're known for.
Awesome.
So we'll see, but I think they hold on to that pick, and
Okay.
then because they have that other
Second. Okay.
first
I didn't
round
know
pick.
okay. I didn't know they had 2 of them. I thought you said one.
Well, one last thing I'll ask about Texans. One thing they did do right was J.J. Watt. He just announced his retirement. You obviously got to see his career. I feel like everybody feels like he's a first ballot Hall of Famer for a guy who was a big Texans fan, and you got to see him play and excel. And he seems like, I was watching the Hard Knocks in season. He seems like just an incredible guy, both on the field and off of it. What did he kind of mean to you in your time watching the Texans?
Maybe my all-time favorite Houston Texan. And it's funny because when we drafted him, I was like, "Who? Why are we drafting this guy? This white defensive end from Wisconsin?" I'd never heard of him, but I wasn't really a fan of the draft pick at the time. But it only took 17 weeks, and he tipped a pass and ran it back for a touchdown in our first ever playoff game or playoff win. And that's kind of where he made his mark, and then it was just what a fantastic career, what an athlete. What a human being, both on and off the field. He's a great guy. He did a lot for the community in Houston. He's very well loved in Houston. And just, I mean, I've never seen that guy played with such a motor. I mean, he just never took a play off. I mean, he had something, I think, 5 touchdowns in his career as a defensive end.
Yeah, it was 5 or 6. He mentioned that
5
on
or
the show.
6. Yeah, they mentioned it on the Hard Knocks. I mean, that's just crazy. And double-digit sacks in multiple seasons, batted passes. I mean, I think, he changed the way a lot of defensive linemen play the game now with,
Mhm.
understanding, like, if I can't get to the quarterback, I can still get my arms up and maybe bat the ball down.
Well, and
Um,
more athletic too, more athletic defensive
Certainly.
linemen too, because we think of the pass rushers being the more athletic, coming off the edge, but defensive linemen now, I mean, obviously Watt, but and then now Donald. So yeah, more athletic now that they can be more versatile now.
Sure. But yeah, I think he's a first ballot Hall of Famer. It was sad to see him go to Arizona. I was hoping that Arizona would have some success. That's a guy that um, I wish would have been able to win a Super Bowl ring.
Hmm.
But as he mentioned, he wants to leave the game playing at a high level, and can't fault him for that. He's put together
12
a hell of
sacks
a
this year.
career.
12 and a half sacks.
Yeah, 12 and a half
Unreal.
sacks. Yeah, the guy's
Yeah.
a stud. It's
Yeah,
it's sad to see him go. It'll be sad not to be able to see him play football anymore. But there's not much else he can accomplish.
Okay.
One last thing before we let Pollen get out of here. We're almost done with the show, but I just want to see how Pollen's doing. How's your little one doing? How's life treating you? What's going on with you these days?
Life is good, man. I've got Lily. She just turned 3.
Wow.
She's definitely in her 3-nager, as they call it, mode or zone or age or whatever. But she's a lot of fun. I mean, being a dad is great. It's really kind of more than I could have anticipated or expected, but it's a lot of fun. Just a family, man. Life is a lot different than it used to be, but in a good way. So everything's good, man. I'm enjoying myself and having a family and working and not much has changed other than that, but everything's good.
That's great. That's amazing to hear. I love hearing the stories. I mean, we've known each other for 16, 17 years. Crazy it's been that long and how time flies since college. And I love to hear how everyone's doing. And, I get on Facebook once in a while, but just to see, I saw pictures of Lily here right before the show started, and she's beautiful. And it seems like you've done a great job with her. So I'm super excited to see her kind of grow up with you. And I'm sure you're learning as you go along too, since this is your first kid. So pretty cool stuff indeed. So last thing we'll say before we get out of here, just looking at next year's draft order, 1 through 6, if you're not familiar, are kind of lined up based on the regular season. So some of that stuff that consolation bracket doesn't really matter. And then 7 through 12 are based on the playoffs. So who's going to be drafting first? Not Todd. It'll be Chad Powers fan club. So Miles, he'll be drafting first. Then it's Todd with his Butterfingers, Cooper Cousins, Dylan at number 3, Notorious CUP Quayne at 4, the NWA, he'll be at 5th, Kevin Eaton W's at 6, the Belt Sanders at 7, Lion Rip at 8, Hot Tamales at 9, Lemonheads at 10, Kilgore Trout at 11, and the guy who said at pretty much at the beginning of the show that he likes drafting at the end, he'll get to draft at the end and get the first pick in the second round at number 12. So any early predictions on where you're going to take at number 12?
Who knows, man? With this league, who knows? There's always somebody drafted, somebody in the first round that you don't think is going to get drafted where they get drafted. So there's
Najee
always, yeah,
I know. Yeah,
there's
no,
always some surprise picks.
no, yeah, no surprises this year. I'll tell you that right now.
Yeah.
I'd like to think that if there's, if I go last there, that 12, and then the first pick of the second round, in this league, I'd like to probably get 2 top tier wide receivers.
There you go.
Kind of back to back. That seems to have worked out well for Aaron quite a few times.
Yeah.
So I've always liked that kind of strategy, especially in this league with the points per reception. You guys discussed it. Wide receivers versus running backs. Running backs, there aren't as many, but I think you can get more points from wide receivers in this league if you get guys that make a lot of catches. If they stay healthy, yep.
Yeah, well, I'm just saying they stay more healthy than I think running backs do.
Well, yeah, true. That's less punishment for sure.
Yeah. Well, cool. Pollen, anything else you want to say? You want to send some thank yous out or whatever before we get out of here?
No, I
Thank the
mean,
fantasy football gods
it
for
was a
Canada.
really, yeah, for real. It was a really fun season. You know, it was, pretty nerve wracking. I think playoffs. It's good to get my first championship after I guess 8 straight playoff appearances, and then
Yeah.
um, and then getting a championship. So I'm glad I was able to get over my lemon heads hump. No offense to you, Eric, but
That's all right.
it was nice, and it was pretty cool to get to go against Joe in the championship. Have a Metro championship,
Yeah.
which was kind of cool. So Joe Vac, he's a dad too, so I hope he's
He
doing
is.
well. And Quayne is a dad, so
Yep.
I hope those guys are doing well too. But yeah, a lot of fun. Look forward to next year. Let's see if I can put together a back-to-back, which is pretty hard to do. But I'm going to enjoy this one for a while.
Yeah,
Absolutely. Make sure you go into that message board and text us and remind us that you're the champ.
That's what you got to do.
Once a week.
Yeah.
Once a week.
Right? Absolutely. Well, I appreciate you guys having me on.
Yeah, no
It was
problem.
a lot of fun talking football with you guys.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So thanks for coming on, Pollen. We wish you the best with your kid and your family, and hopefully everything goes well. I know we're going to get together soon, so I can hand you your trophy. But what's coming up on next week's show? Well, we're going to hand out our MHA awards, MVP of the season, the bust of the year, the move of the year, and many, many more. So make sure you tune in for that. We'll also hand out our All MHA award, All MHA team award, I should say. Best QB, best 2 running backs, best 2 wide receivers, best tight end, best kicker and defense, blah, blah, blah. So make sure you tune in for that. Of course, thanks Pollen, Mikey Renaud, Todd Diamond, I'm Eric Lansing. We'll see you next time on the MHA podcast.